moving out of the city, the only thing I've thought about as far as distance goes is how long will it take me to get to the market. People need the West Side Market. It's a little tiny issue. It's not health care for the world. It's not, world peace, but it's an issue that poor people, middle income people, anybody can go and get what they need, and decent human beings run businesses in a decent way. And so I am hoping that City Council will really take a step back and pull away from all of the influence of, and we all know who they are, of these restaurants and bars and businesses, and actually consider for once the well-being and the health and welfare of the residents of Cleveland.
Great. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. We have Mark Milko, please come on up. And then next, after Mark, will be Rosemary. Satinder, please.
Good evening. My name is Satinder Puri. I'm a community activist, a volunteer teacher, a retired structural engineer, and a resident of Ward 16 on Cleveland's west side. As a community activist, I've been fighting for social justice and issues of vital importance to my community. One does not have to look any further than Cleveland to observe the corrupting influence of the rich and powerful. Washington is corrupt because cities like Cleveland are corrupt. I have 4 cases from my activism that illustrate the corrupting influences in Cleveland, Ohio. There were 2 hunger strikes to protest the corruption. The 4 cases: Save John Marshall High School campaign, Leave Public Square, also known as Jimmy DeMora Public Square because of the corruption, Vote No on the 2015 Art Syntax campaign, and the current No to Corporate Welfare for the billionaire Cavs owner, Yes to Go Cavs campaign. These campaigns illustrate misuse of political power and denial of due process by City Hall, vote rigging at the Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting of January 12, 2012, role played by the art and architectural critic of the Plain Dealer and the CEO of City Club to shut out the opposition in the 2015 Vote No on the Art Syntax campaign. I was the lone person opposing it. Demonstrating the power of the arts establishment, whose art objects are supposed to elevate us to be better human beings, but who operated, nevertheless, as another corrupt entity. And the power exerted by the billionaire Cavs owner in swaying elected Cleveland City and Cuyahoga County council persons to provide public funds for renovation of the queue, which fortunately is being challenged via a petition process to place the issue for a referendum. I'm submitting a document for the record which contains the details and references. Thank you for your attention.
Great. Thank you very much, Satinder. Can Rosemary Palmer come up, and she's after Mark. Mark, please, if you could say your title.
Yes, thank you for your time today. I'm Mark Milko. I'm the president of Workers United Local 10. I'm also the chairman of the board of the North Shore Federation of Labor. I want to talk about the move to amend today. Since our country was founded, there's always been some type of voter suppression. First, only landowners could vote in this country. The 15th Amendment passed, giving African Americans the right to vote, but following that, poll taxes came to be, and we had to get to the 24th Amendment to do away with that. Citizens United was passed to give corporations the right to be considered citizens, which, as Mr. Culver said, is ridiculous. The law also gives unions more flexibility on campaigns, but it is a mere pittance to what giant conglomerates can give. Corporations can bleed ink, but they can't bleed blood. Our view is that corporations can use their influence to suppress citizens' will to vote, and we agree there needs to be an amendment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And Rosemary, before you start, can we have Lynn? There's Lynn Alfred and Bob Hanson. If you're a duo, you're going to take the... Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, so if we can get Carla Rothenburg up here as well to go next. And just to let everybody know, in terms of residents, we've got 5 or 6 non-residents, but of the residents list, we're about an hour. We've got about an hour worth of speakers, so we're doing really, really well. Again, you have 5 minutes. If you can shorten it, great. If not, take the full 5. Rosemary, please.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Palmer, speaking for Cleveland Peace Action's Fund Our Communities Coalition. Now, I've never had a desire to be an accountant, so I'm going to be throwing around a lot of big numbers, but if anybody, it's okay. All right. According to the National Priorities Project, in 2014, the federal government paid an average of $388 per person, or approximately $4.5 billion in Department of Defense contracts in Ohio. And we can contrast that to the federal food stamps, which paid an average of $219 per person, or $2.5 billion statewide. And we understand that the city government doesn't distribute federal funds. However, if we look at the federal funding to the Cleveland 44109 zip code, we can see that the federal government awarded $4,006,548 in contracts, which includes $1.5 billion in EPA funds for the W.C. Reed Playfield and $834,364 for Metro Health Hospital. For the Slavic Village 44127 zip code, we see $500,000 in EPA funds funneled to environmental protection projects. Those projects don't just happen. They require local officials to be made aware of the need and make the requests. So when you're looking at Cleveland needs and contemplating federal funding requests, please remember all of the city's residents and program for those in the poorer areas of the city, and not just for those who can afford to help fund campaigns and who frequent expensive downtown entertainment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. And if I can call up Daryl Davis, please, is after Ann. Ann, please. Or I'm sorry, Patricia.
So you
Patricia.
called me up, but I'm not a resident.
Oh, Carla. Oh,
I'm not a Cleveland
but you're
resident.
with.
I'm with
You're
Move
with
to
Move to
Amend
Amend. That's
Ohio
why I called
Network.
you up. Yeah.
Okay.
Just for those who know, Move to Amend was primary mover of the petition drive in general. So I'm giving her time mainly because of her participation in the petitioning movement. Please, Carla.
Good afternoon. I'm Carla Rothenburg. I'm with the Move to Amend Ohio Network. I'm on the coordinating committee and work at the state level as well as locally. As everybody here knows, the first three words of the Constitution are "we the people," not we the judges, not we the corporations, or even we the elected officials. In a monarchy, the monarch is sovereign. In a democratic republic, citizens hold the sovereign power. We'd better start acting like it. I wonder how many of us in this room today really believe the people rule. We all understand that obviously corporations are not actual people. Yet since 1886, they have enjoyed something called legal personhood, which is the ability to assert rights under the law. But I will show that legal personhood is completely bogus. The U.S. Constitution states that we the people are free and sovereign, so only we have the power to create government. We may delegate certain tasks to our government, but it must always remain subordinate and accountable to the people. People have rights. Government only has duties. As people, our rights are not subject to the public political process. No public policy or public law can violate any person's private individual constitutional rights. Our founders had experience with the potential for corporate abuse because the English monarchs had handed the charters of several of the colonies to business corporations, and that didn't always go well. Therefore, Therefore, the Constitution very deliberately delegated the power to grant charters of incorporation to the state governments, where theoretically it still resides. Each corporate charter was granted for a specific purpose and a limited period of time, often 20 years. The charter conferred particular advantages to the company, but not rights. If the owners of the corporation wished to change its purpose or extend the life of the charter, they had to ask the state legislature for permission. The consequence for a corporation that violated the terms of its charter was revocation, the unequivocal death of that enterprise. Just imagine. Since that time, various unelected individuals appointed for life to the Supreme Court have interpreted our Constitution mostly to the benefit of the members of their class. That would be the upper one. And often setting dangerously bad precedents. The very concept of legal personhood has been a slippery slope which only worsened with the Citizens United case in 2010 and several terrible decisions since then. How bad is it? Well, let's put it this way. We have had a distinguished nonprofit corporation purportedly dedicated to protecting the civil liberties of American citizens take donations from the tobacco industry and then go to court to protect said industry's First Amendment free speech rights to advertise a deadly product. This was back in the 1980s and 90s. Then we had the self-same nonprofit corporation filing an amicus brief in support of the Citizens United case. And most Americans who donate to this organization don't know about these things. I speak, of course, of the American Civil Liberties Union. So the rot is indeed very, very deep. Let us all heed the exhortation of the second American president, John Adams, and I quote, "Government is instituted for the common good, for the protection, safety, prosperity, and happiness of the people, and not for the profit, honor, or private interest of any one man, family, or class of men," unquote. That is our challenge as Americans and our birthright. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to make note that we're joined by Councilman Jeff Johnson and Councilman Kevin Conwell. If we could have Chris Stocking come on up next to Daryl, and then Gilda Malone will be after Chris. Daryl, please.
Okay.
Daryl Davis.
Yeah, Carla, that was really good because you pointed out the commons. The commons are our wealth. The commons is what the corporations want. They want our water. They want our children. They want our schools. They want control over every part of our life. And so I come from a family where a lot of time was spent reading books and making music. We have no time for that anymore. We're making choices. We have choice. We have to make a choice. Hurry up and do it. We have to make a choice about your health provider. You have to make a choice about your power provider. You have to choose this, choose that. We are consumers. We are no longer citizens. Rise up and say no. Now, I have a granddaughter who's a teacher. She went into this business with the highest expectations, and it has been rotten, just rotten, as long as she was employed by a Constellation school. And they cycle kids in and out. These are kids who don't do well in the public schools, shove them off into a Constellation school. Maybe they'll do better there. They don't do better there because they have inferior equipment, inferior teachers, inferior organization. The administration doesn't work. And so the kids fail again, and they're out of there. And then on a lifetime cycle of no getting better. And this is what the Constellation schools and all those other charter schools do. Fortunately, my granddaughter got out of it. She's in a public school, and she's doing really, really well. And for a young person, a very young person, and I look around the room, and there are not very many young persons here, and they're probably all working their butts off to pay off their student loans. And, right. And so how come it can't be all up to us? This is the most important issue of my life, and I have been working on issues all my life. There is no time to back down. We can't fail. I have an ultimate expression of dissent. And everybody knows this who's ever heard me. Over my dead body. That is the ultimate despair. Can't go worse than that.
Thank you, Daryl. If we can have Gilda Malone, please come up. Gilda Malone. And we have Chris Stocking. Please, Chris, speak into the microphone.
Okay. I wanted to talk about how money in politics affects local issues here in Cleveland. I'm not sure if everyone was aware, but in February of last year, City Council passed ordinance number 10516. This ordinance increased campaign finance limits for City Council as well as the mayor's office. Specifically, individuals donating to the mayor, the cap went up from $1,000 to $5,000. So it went up 500%. And this has not been good because the Frank G. Jackson for a Better Cleveland, at the end of 2015, his reelection fund, had $124,000 in it. Since the new limits took effect, just in 1 year, his fund has grown over 270%. He raised over $212,000 in 1 year. And now he's got over $337,000 total in that fund. So we can see why he's running for re-election, because he has this big chunk of money sitting there, even though if you've listened to him, he might not be the most engaging politician, but he's sure got a lot of money in the bank. And I just wanted to thank the following individuals who donated a maximum amount of $5,000 to Frank Jackson. I wanted to recognize their contribution to democracy in Cleveland. Scott and Adelbert Morris of Morris Construction, Brian, Deborah, Albert, and Audrey Ratner, as well as Sam Miller of Forest City Enterprises, Robert Bowen, and Robert Smith. Thank you all for your $5,000 contributions to Mayor Jackson. There's nothing illegal about this. I want to emphasize that. But what's going on here, there's no quid pro quo, but what this is part of a larger gift economy. So according to Lawrence Lessig, who wrote a book about this, a gift economy is grounded upon relationships and how these relationships grow over time. It cements a relationship and allows undue influence, and politicians feel an obligation when they get that money handed to them. It's not that they're buying a favor, but they feel like, oh, since they donated, I kind of have an obligation to them. You know, even if they don't recognize that, there's studies shown that your mind works that way. So the way that this system continues is that politicians feel dependent upon this money, so that automatically, even though it's not quid pro quo, they're not paying for a favor, they're still going to lean towards people who have donated money, and those people get more influence than the everyday Clevelander. So we have to ask, what is our local government? Is it a republic that we have representatives that represent us, or is it a plutocracy which is ruled by the wealthy few? The increased campaign finance limits were not the only noticeable ordinances that were passed last February. On that same night, February 8th, they also passed an ordinance for the Batchelder Company, a GOP lobbyist firm, for $70,000 to lobby against the minimum wage at the state level. And they crushed the minimum wage. So when we see normal everyday people, we don't see that represented in city council, but as soon as a plutocrat's toes are stepped on, as soon as someone who's wealthy, their toes are stepped on, we see the city of Cleveland going down and lobbying for them. But what are they doing for us? Are they lobbying against bank foreclosures? No. I don't see that money being spent to lobby against banks. I see it lobbied against increasing the minimum wage, and that's disappointing. And what happened later in the year, in December, we passed the ordinance 1015, which was actually this ballot initiative where we got nearly 9,000 signatures to have this Democracy Day and to establish that the people of Cleveland believe that money is not speech and corporations do not have the same rights that people have. That's what we did. We went out and we got nearly 9,000 signatures, and it was going to go on the ballot, but City Council signed it so people didn't have to vote on it, and now we have this hearing. But what I'm upset about is just 2 meetings later, the second meeting in December, what did they do? They passed, again, an extension to that GOP lobbying firm at the state level of $48,000 for 2017. $48,000 in taxpayer money to continue to lobby at the state level against the interests of the people of Cleveland, against the minimum wage and similar issues. So we had at the end of December, through this citizens initiative, that money is not speech and corporations are not people. We established that. We got 9,000 signatures. City Council signed it. And what do? 2 City Council meetings later, send $48,000 to a lobbyist in Columbus. Why? Why you do that? I want to know why. And the other thing that I want to know is that City Council has a leadership fund. I don't know if you're all familiar with this, but it has over $110,000 in it. And they use that money so that they can keep the same people reelected. And if you don't go and vote how the president wants you to vote, because the president is the one that controls the City Council Leadership Fund, if you don't fall in line, then you're not going to get that funding from that City Council Leadership Fund. So we need to change that. What we need is we need publicly funded elections. We need to dissolve the City Council Leadership Fund and use that money to match small donations for new candidates to run for office so they don't have the influence of the gift economy. So City Council, I look forward to working with you. I don't mean to be hostile. I'm just passionate about the facts. And I look forward to working with you and dissolving the City Council Leadership Fund, establishing publicly funded elections, to stop sending this money to the state against the minimum wage, and to roll back the limits on campaign financing back to $1,000 per person, so we don't have Frank Jackson having over $300,000 in 1 year. That's absurd.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. We're going to have, if we could have, we're going to have Gilda up next, and I call Lucy, I think it's Lucy Perk, up to sit next to Gilda. She'll be going next. Is there a Lucy? Yeah. Is there a Lucy here? I might not have read the first name right.
First name is Lucy.
Okay. Pat. Okay, thank you. Gilda, please.
Hello, my name is Gilda Malone. I'm a community activist. I live in Ward 11. My thoughts are strictly to the councilman, those of you who thought enough of us as citizens to come, is I'm asking for freedom of speech in City Hall. I've asked for it. This is the first time I've seen anything nearly look like it. You can't even come to City Hall at some point with a sign and you will be arrested. You have no rights in City Hall. So I'm asking that the new people who are elected, that they amend that and make it where the citizens can hear what has to go on in City Hall. The other thing is I'm asking the council people to redefine or read what block grant funding means. Block grant, a financial package that gains federal money for state and local government for the use in social welfare programs such as law enforcement, community development, and health services. Block grants provide money for general areas of those things to be improved. I don't see it in many of the communities, even though I live on the west side. My also thought is to limit the time that council people can serve in City Hall, who are now considered to me our corporation for the city of Cleveland. And to ask you to please learn to give up the law that you have carried for many years, which is called the gentleman's law. Because I haven't seen very many gentlemen who allow their city to go raggedy like you do. Do away with it. Start making council people and ward people accountable for their funding. Right now, council is called Big Business in Cleveland. Let's get back to where I want to go. It's called Grassroots Campaign. Change. Are you all in?
Thank you, Gilda. And before Lucy starts, I'd ask Susan Rosman to please come up as well. Lucy, please. Okay. Lucy Peck. Thank you.
I just want to say, as an individual, I am not affiliated with any organization, but I'm concerned about what's happening in our neighborhoods. The lady that just spoke to the issue of block clubs. You hear about how there is never any money for local programs, never any money for more police, more public transportation, but there's always money for the queue, and there's always money for the big name, shouted out, Cleveland is great sort of thing. And I just would like a 360-degree swivel so that what makes Cleveland really great is the people who pay the taxes, who pay the council's salary. And it seems as if the money is just being frittered away, and where it really needs to go, it is not getting to where it needs to go. So as an individual, that's all I have to say. The other thing I have to say is everybody get out and vote when it's voting time, so that if you have a complaint and you don't vote, it doesn't mean spit. But if you vote, you got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Thanks for shortening your time to help others as well. And I'd ask, before Susan begins, for Trudy Hutchinson to come up as well. Okay, Bonnie Sykes then is next. Bonnie Sykes? Okay, Walter Nicholson? No? Okay. And then we can get into David Lima would be next. Please, Susan.
Okay. Hi. Susan Rosman, the Larchmere, Buckeye, Woodhill, Woodland, Shaker Square neighborhood. I've been in Cleveland 20 years now. I moved to Cleveland because I wanted my family to be in a diverse neighborhood. We have so many great things going here, but we don't put the money into promoting what is great. We don't allow the people to speak. We don't allow their voices to have more opportunities at the table. 20 years ago, bringing kids into the city, I actually was one of the parents who opted into the voucher program. And I went down to Washington, D.C., and I wanted the voucher program because I was in the city and I wanted a safe place for my kids. It ended up being a parochial school. It wasn't for the religion. It was for a safe space for my kids. And it was a diverse space for my kids. So, you know, how things are taking, you know, we're not allowing our school systems to improve as quickly as they can because we're not asking the people who are in the school systems. We need more younger people at the table. We need their voices immediately when they're out of school. What worked for you while you were in high school? We don't have to have these corporations come in with their ideas of how to make more profit off of it. I mean, I think that the body of people here in Cleveland have the answers to their, they have the solutions to their problems. I quickly got a job at a major institution at University Circle, and it was wonderful being there, and I learned a lot about the city, but I also learned a lot about the limits that our fine institutions allow the city of Cleveland residents to access. We have to limit the access to our public institutions by offering them 2 or 3 or 4 free days out of the year so that they can take advantage of the education that we have here. Everybody should go to these institutions. Yes, the art museum is free, but all of these other educational institutions should not have to have a dollar value on it for you to enjoy that education. So that's one. We used to have autonomy in our departments at some of these institutions. And then, it started becoming about the bottom dollar and how can we minimize the staff and how can we cut corners. And you end up cutting corners from people who are invested in these institutions, where people really meet people. We don't have enough people meeting people. It is all about how quickly you can get people through. When you lose that contact of asking people,